Within every group, one person will always emerge as the leader. It's the natural order of our species to fall into social roles. We align ourselves and unify through like-minded ideologies. But when a new element is introduced, the harmony of the group is disrupted. Disagreement will spawn a new leader, one that separates from the fray and challenges the old leader. Our kinship is tested, and in the end, only one leader will prevail.
Do you ever miss home?
Nigel stood 10 feet away, his back turned to me. His suit obscured the direction his eyes were gazing towards, but I knew he was looking up at the sky. "This is our home," I responded with confidence. "We live here." His voice crackled through my earpiece.
You know what I mean, Al.
He raised his arm and extended his palm toward the stars above.
Earth.
"We're never going back. It's been 20 years. I don't really think about it anymore." I turned away and overlooked the thriving community we had built together with pride in my chest. Nigel had named our community Cronus, after the Greek god of agriculture when we first landed, and the name stuck, despite headquarters preemptively naming it Spirit after the rover that landed here in 2004. Cronus was now a series of living units spanning across 36 different pods. There were only 2 when we first arrived. In 20 years, we've gone from 4 people to 72. Remarkable, if I do say so myself. My focus is occupied with the settlement, I continued, making sure the foundations for humanity on Mars are established, and we've exceeded our most optimistic goals by staying focused.
Christ. I miss Chinese food.
You say that a lot.
It's just... we've done our time here, don't you think? We're getting old, Al. We've built this settlement from the ground up together, gave our whole lives for this, and we don't even have much more to offer. Eventually, we'll be too weak to pick up the hammer. We'll be absorbing vital resources as we slowly die, rather than making further contributions to the settlement.
He stopped for a moment and let out a heavy breath into the headset.
Neil Armstrong went to the moon and then returned to Earth, where he was celebrated as a hero for humanity. Shouldn't we have the same privilege? Shouldn't we be living out the rest of our days on a beach in Hawaii instead of this cold, lifeless desert?
We knew what we signed up for, I assured him. I'm looking forward to living the rest of my days here and watching Cronus expand even further than it already has. Nigel turned and snickered at me, his eyes slightly bloodshot from what appeared to be tears. He expressed his thoughts on returning to Earth previously, but never had I seen the notion affect him the way it was now. Something wasn't right with him. "Nigel, what's gotten into you?" His only response was to lower his head to the ground and walk slowly past me, back towards the airlock. I watched him walk, a wistful man longing for something he'll never receive. As day turned to night on the red planet, I did my best to think of something to raise his spirits, but with resources limited, there was not much to offer. This place had no viable respite. Perhaps he envisioned our time here unfolding differently. Maybe he expected more to come of our time and our sacrifice, and simply laying the foundations for future generations was not the ultimate goal. 20 years is a long time to wait for something without the gratification of obtaining it. I can sympathize. I've spent countless nights awake in my living unit, staring at the ceiling, wondering what was happening on Earth, and envying those who were fortunate to indulge in luxuries I no longer had access to, and never would. Those thoughts lasted only briefly. The prospect of our mission eventually devoured all personal desire. Everyone at Kronos had those thoughts from time to time, and they would quickly fade. For Nigel, though, this time the thoughts were not fading. My old friend was losing his enthusiasm in life. He needed me. Before going to sleep for the night, I booted up my laptop and sent Nigel an email. "Tomorrow marks the 20th anniversary of our landing here. That's almost 11 Martian years. We should celebrate. Come to my living unit after morning audit. I've been hiding a bottle of whiskey that came with the last arrivals just for us." I clicked send and went to sleep, hoping the email would provide a little boost to his mood when he saw it. The morning came and brought with it the usual routine of checking diagnostics on the habitat for any potential issues. I greeted my unimate, Vanessa, when I awoke. She had come to Cronus 4 years ago, and we had shared our unit for the last 6 months. The living units rotated individuals regularly, so there wouldn't be any risk of growing too attached or agitated with someone. Socializing on Mars wasn't exactly frowned upon, but it was still viewed as a distraction. When you're one of only a few people on an entire planet, a petty squabble has devastating potential. We had our times of bonding together as a group, but for the most part, we tried to keep it to a minimum and stay focused on our work and staying alive. Vanessa and I, on the other hand, skipped the last rotation and stayed in the same unit. We made up some excuse about how moving her items may compromise her geological research. In truth, we just didn't want to be apart. Before she moved in, I had forgotten what it was like to make a deep connection with another person. Vanessa was still my unit mate to everyone here, but there were a few nights shortly after she moved in where our relationship went beyond the professional guise we displayed during the day. Soon we stopped fighting the connection we had and embraced it. We cared deeply for each other. There was an unspoken agreement between Vanessa and I that we would keep our relationship secret to the rest of Cronus. We both knew no good would come of it. During the day, she would sometimes find a moment to show me she cared when no one else was around. She would place a light fingertip on the dorsal side of my hand and draw an imaginary heart. It was so endearing and always made me ecstatic, invigorating the youthful spirit that had dwindled over the years. Vanessa sat at a desk adjacent to her bed, typing away on her computer. I stared at her from behind for a moment, admiring the beauty of her long auburn hair cascading over the back of her swivel chair. "Good morning," I said to her with a smile. She turned in her chair and greeted me with a smile of her own.
"Morning."
"Did you sleep well last night?" She scrunched her nose and squinted her eyes.
"Not so great, actually."
"Oh, is everything all right?"
"Oh, I'm fine. I don't know. Couldn't get comfortable, I guess. Something just felt off to me."
"I'm sorry, sweetie," I said as I raised my body from the bed. I walked to the window and stared out at the red planet. Our living unit was on the very outer edge of Cronus and provided a spectacular view of the surrounding landscape of Gusev Crater. In the sky was a lone, shining beacon resting peacefully in the bleak light of dawn, Phobos. It was much smaller from the surface of Mars than Luna was to Earth, but I always saw it as much bigger than it actually was. I loved seeing it every day. There were never any clouds disrupting the view, only the occasional dust storm. Taking in the view every morning solidified my purpose in life. This was where I belonged. I was home. My attention was drawn to the LED alert on my computer indicating new notifications. I sat at the desk next to Vanessa and brought up my HUD. The transparent screen came to life in front of me, the corner of the screen marked with a red 36 in my email. More than the usual day, likely because of the anniversary, I assumed. My inbox was filled with congratulatory messages, a couple reports from the automated algorithms that monitored stasis through Cronus and any possible contamination in the habitat, and one reply from Nigel. I had almost forgotten about the email I sent him the night before. I opened the reply from Nigel first. All he sent back to me was a 5-word response. "It's too late for that."
"What is it?"
"It's Nigel. I don't know." I rolled my chair over to the intercom and selected Nigel's living unit. "Nigel, are you there?" I waited nervously for a few seconds, each one ticking by with a loud thud in my chest. "Nigel, can you hear me?" Someone breathed slowly into the other end, puffing methodically into the microphone. "Nigel, is that you? Are you all right?" A weak voice finally broke through my speaker.
"Can I go home now?"
Speaking to him through the intercom wasn't optimal. Nigel was having some sort of breakdown and needed someone to calm him. I shot out of my chair and burst out of the living unit. Just outside my door was a group of about 30 people, all wearing party hats and holding up a small cake. They all shouted in unison, cheering my emergence. Laughter and clapping immediately followed, the group all thrilled to shower me with praise. This was either all a ruse or just terrible timing. Either way, I wasn't taking the risk. Without a word, I ran past everyone, determined to reach Nigel's unit. A few of the people all mumbled inexplicably as I ran past them.
What's gotten into him?
I heard a young man say. There wasn't any time to explain. I rushed through commons and down the hall to Nigel's unit and immediately swung his door open. Inside, Nigel sat on his bed, perched like a gargoyle. His face was red as the sun and his eyes were bloodshot. On the floor, between the two beds in the unit, was the body of his unit mate, Richard, partially covered with a white bedsheet. Only his blue, lifeless face protruded from underneath. The muscles in his face were frozen in a look of anguish. His mouth and eyes were open as though he were constantly reliving the last moments of his life. Around his neck were thick lines of bruised skin.
Can I go home now?
Nigel said in the same frail tone he had through the intercom. Nigel, what have you done?
Satellite link in 60 seconds.
Craig announced from behind his monitor. His fingers furiously clicked away at the keyboard. His eyes rapidly scanned the UI in front of him. Craig was always relentless in his IT skills. The trance he displayed now was pretty common, although I could detect his fingers were working faster than they ever had before.
What are you going to tell them?
Vanessa asked, standing over me while I sat in front of the monitor, waiting for the connection to establish. We'll tell them the truth, Miggy responded for us. He was another member of the original four who had first come to Mars. His name was Miguel, but he preferred to be called Miggy. The moniker accurately captured the quirky personality he often expressed. Today, though, his quirky nature had vanished. Next to him, Stephanie, the last of the original four, stood. Her hair was unnaturally messy, and she looked as though she fell out of a tree, the whirlwind of the day's events preventing her from putting effort into her appearance. Vanessa gave a single nod of her head and put her hand on my shoulder.
Are you doing all right?
She asked in a voice slightly above a whisper. Honestly, I shifted my stiff head and met her gaze. No. She gave me a look of sympathy, then discreetly moved her hand towards the back of my neck. I felt her fingertips outline a heart over my skin, centered right on my spine. The sensation sent a comforting wave through my body. I looked at her and gave a subtle smile. She gave me one back.
30 seconds.
I took a deep breath and tried to sound professional. Thank you, Vanessa. We'll make an announcement to everyone after we're through here. She removed her hand, nodded, then turned and walked out of the room. The door whisked shut behind her, leaving the four of us alone. I nervously wiped the sweat off my forehead as I waited for the video feed to load. It had only been a little more than 2 hours since the discovery that shook Cronus. None of us would ever quite be the same. The foundations of our little society was dealt a devastating blow after the last member of the initial four, as we were aptly referred to as around Cronus, turned out to be a killer. Nigel. The screen blinked and displayed a message I had grown accustomed to over the years. Connection established. The video feed opened in a separate window, where we were greeted with the board of directors of the Galileo Project, the organization responsible for the first colony on Mars. They sat around a lengthy oak table, seated comfortably in luxurious leather chairs. At the end of the table sat a familiar face, Ivan Samuel. I hadn't seen him in person in nearly 22 years, but I have watched his face grow wrinkles and his hair turn gray in our time apart. Ivan stood from his chair with a toothy grin and spoke enthusiastically.
Al, Miguel, Stefania, on behalf of the Galileo Project and everyone on planet Earth, congratulations on 20 years living on Mars.
The team around the conference table clapped their hands.
Well done.
I held up a hand and gave them a solemn look, then waited for the clapping to end. I'm afraid we have a bit of a situation here at Cronus. Ivan sat and slouched in his chair.
A situation? What kind of situation?
There's been a murder. The room gasped, and everyone shot confused looks at each other. One of our own here has killed another.
Who? Who is the killer?
Miggy huffed a deep breath loudly. I'm afraid it's Nigel, sir. He suffocated Richard Cloud in his sleep last night.
Are you joking?
He's not.
Oh my, this is terrible.
Ivan looked around the room in deep thought.
Why? Why would he do such a horrendous thing?
We're not entirely sure about that, but I believe he did it because he doesn't want to be here anymore.
You mean he wants to come back to Earth?
That's what he said. He keeps asking if he can go home. A cold silence fell over the feed. No one quite sure what to make of the news. Their blank stares at each other mirrored what I was feeling. We had no protocol for this, no plan for any kind of action. Prepping for life on Mars never included any training for handling murder scenarios.
Where is Nigel now?
A woman I recognized as Charlotte Werner, the CFO, asked.
He's isolated in his living unit. We've designated a surveillance team to keep an eye on his every move.
Good.
Why does he want to leave Mars?
I recalled the day before when Nigel confided in me. He spoke with me yesterday and made a comment about his age. He's 53 years old now. I think he's experiencing a transition of identity, a severe one. I took my eyes off the screen and stared out the window to my left, allowing myself a moment to get lost in my own thoughts. Mars looked different to me now compared to the morning when I awoke with Vanessa and admired Phobos in the dim sky. The events of the day cast a ubiquitous depression over the planet I called home. The endless red stretching to the horizon served as a reminder of the harsh conditions we occupied. All of us at Cronus were living in a place that nature never intended us to live in. We didn't fit. Mars was speaking to us, warning us. You cannot force life to exist where it didn't belong. My focus shifted from the window to the floor in front of me. Regardless of what Nigel had done, I still thought of him as my friend, a friend who was in need of help. I couldn't shake the feeling of guilt for not being able to help him. What he did was wrong, of course, but he still deserved sympathy. I think he should return to Earth.
Are you mad?
It would be best for everyone in Cronus. It's not like we have a prison to stick him in. The Galileo project cannot continue with him here. Ivan slammed the palm of his fist against the table and hastily raised himself out of the chair.
It's not like calling an Uber, you know. Do you have any idea how much it would cost? Not to mention how long it would take. Even if we had a craft ready to launch today, we couldn't do it. The planets aren't even aligned properly.
I'm fully aware that it would take some time.
At least 5 years. What are you going to do with him while you wait? Our model is built on sending people there, not bringing them back. We would have to build a specialty ship from scratch. All this on top of the inevitable lawsuits that are sure to follow.
It's not about money. The growth of Kronos is paramount. He's a liability here that will hinder our growth. He needs to go back to Earth and be brought to justice. Ivan placed both his hands on the table and leaned forward, his tone softening.
Look, Al. You and the people at Cronus are pioneers, like the early European settlers of Plymouth. Do you think the Pilgrims pestered England for matters of diplomacy?
I hardly think I'm pestering you.
I'm sorry, Al, but you're on your own. Cronus was eventually going to have social issues arise as more and more people are sent there. It's time you all come up with a way to deal with these things when they happen.
As much as I hated to admit it, Ivan had a point. In 20 years, we'd been lucky enough to avoid any serious confrontations, but it certainly wouldn't be that way forever. Humans will naturally encounter conflicts at some point, and what were we supposed to do with Nigel for the years that would follow as we waited for his departure? We understand, Miggy said, taking over the conversation. What do you advise we do with Nigel?
I would advise you to keep him isolated from the rest of the group. Lock him in his pod until he kills himself or dies naturally. But it's your decision, ultimately. Mars is outside of Earth jurisdiction.
He sat down in his chair again, grabbed a remote, and pointed it at the camera.
Kill him now, if you want, and make it quick. It's in your hands. Report back to us in 24 hours.
Connection lost. The video feed and the monitor went black. I sat there staring in awe at the screen, dumbfounded by the complete lack of remorse Ivan and the board displayed. Their concerns were that of selfish intent. I picked myself up out of the chair and exited the briefing without saying a word to anyone. Vanessa stood outside, leaning against a wall and biting her fingernail, waiting for me to exit the room. She locked eyes with mine and pushed herself off the wall as I approached.
What did they say?
Pretty much nothing. They can't bring him back to Earth, and they expect us to handle this internally. She nodded solemnly.
Not much else they can do, I suppose.
She stuck the tip of her finger back into her teeth and chewed at her nail.
What do we do from here?
We focus on rehabilitating him, isolate him in his cell, and dedicate Dr. Bacchus to conducting daily therapy with him until she can confidently say he's mentally healthy and able to rejoin the colony. She pulled her finger away and gave me a stern look.
You can't be serious.
Of course I am.
Al, he's a killer. You can't possibly think it would ever be okay for him to walk freely among us.
I'm not saying he'll return to his usual duties by tomorrow. It could take years, but what else can we do?
Throw him out the airlock.
The outburst was a side of Vanessa I had not seen before. The ordinarily gentle and nurturing personality she possessed had somehow disappeared. The transformation took me off guard. We're not barbarians, Vanessa.
He can't live with us, that's for sure. No one will trust him again. This is why I couldn't sleep last night. Something was off and my body knew it.
Are you listening to yourself? You're trying to justify murder.
I'm just warning you that there's going to be an uproar if you go this route. People are scared. There'll be chaos throughout Cronus if we don't punish him appropriately. And this colony you've worked so hard for and dedicated your life to will crumble faster than you could ever possibly imagine.
And how do you think we'd be able to live with ourselves after knowing we sentenced a man to death? She's right. A voice from behind me spoke. I turned and saw Craig, Miggy, and Stephanie all exiting the briefing room and walking towards the two of us. Miggy raised his arm in the air as though he were asking to be called upon by an elementary school teacher as we walked. I don't feel comfortable living with a killer, and I know with certainty that many others feel the same. Stephanie shook her head.
I'm with Al. We should make every effort possible to save him, before we place an irreversible and potentially erroneous judgment. We should be sure before deciding.
I had never been a fan of capital punishment, and that stance was not about to change. Life was precious, especially on a planet where it couldn't survive in its natural elements. We shouldn't be throwing it away. The entire concept of punishment and rehabilitation is to preserve life, not destroy it entirely without any chance of redemption. Rehabilitation was the answer. I knew in time he could progress to a functioning person again, but we were divided on the matter. Whatever decision we came to on our own would not satisfy everyone. The decision should not be ours and ours alone. We'll put the decision to a vote, rehabilitation or death. Cronus will decide as a collective unit. It's the only way to ensure civility among the people. We all agreed it was the best course of action, and set forth addressing everyone at Kronos in Commons after everyone had gathered. Stephanie joined me in arguing for rehabilitation, while Miggy adamantly argued for the death penalty. There were times when the debate sparked outrage from within the people, and we had to calm everyone. At some points, people broke down crying. We spent countless hours going back and forth, nearly everyone speaking their opinions of what should be done. All the while, I could see Nigel down the hall, still in his living unit, perched on his bed. He showed little emotion and kept his attention on the floor where the body of Richard was found. It wasn't until Miggy stooped low enough to call him a degenerate waste that I finally saw a reaction from Nigel. He closed his eyes and slowly shook his head from side to side, clearly ashamed of himself. A man filled with grief should never be discarded. The consensus seemed to lean towards death. During my closing argument, I made a last-ditch effort to save his life. I called Nigel to speak in his own defense. The request seemed to catch Nigel off guard, as well as everyone else. But surprisingly, he obliged. He dragged his body through the middle of the crowd, walking as though he were carrying heavy weights at his side. He joined me in front of everyone and pleaded for his life.
I don't really know what to say to you all. I don't blame any of you for your anger towards me, because I'm angry with myself. I've done a horrible thing. Something I'll never forgive myself for.
He paused to collect himself, as he quickly became overwhelmed with emotion. His eyes welled up with tears, and he spoke with a crack in his voice.
But I'm not lost. Look at me. The man you've all known for years is still here, and he wants to come back and join you all. And with a little help, he can. Please, help the man you see before you, Help him become a better person again.
He held his arms out to everyone.
Help me. Don't give up on me. Not yet.
His legs buckled and he fell to his knees. He buried his face in his hands and he wept uncontrollably.
Please, have mercy on me.
The vote was 34 to 37 in favor of rehabilitation. After the votes were tallied, I felt a wave of relief. I did my job to save a life. The destroyed perception I felt earlier about Mars had lifted itself off my shoulders and cast a new prospect of hope. We could continue to thrive. Cronus would live on. The menacing look shot at me by those who voted for death would soon fade once they saw progress. I just knew it. If we stayed on this path, there was a future for all of us here. A future for humanity on Mars. I assured that Nigel's living unit had a guard present and returned to my own living unit alone afterwards. Vanessa asked if she could speak with me, but hearing her support for the complete disregard of basic human rights, I was not quite ready to engage in further disagreement. I asked for some time to myself. Once I had a moment of privacy in my living unit, I reached under my bed and grabbed the bottle of whiskey I had stashed. My original intention was to share this with Nigel, but given the circumstances, sharing a drink with him wouldn't be right. I felt I had earned the drink without him. For the 20 years I dedicated to building a new world, and for upholding justice. I took a shot and plopped myself into bed, mentally exhausted from all that had transpired. The sun had started to fade when I took another shot and closed my eyes, drifting off into nothingness. Eventually, I was awakened by a loud bang coming from outside that seemed to echo through Cronus. My eyes shot open, and I realized I was surrounded by darkness. I had slept through sunset. The only source of light were the stars outside. I crawled out of bed and reached for the light just as the breach alarm sounded, indicating a rupture had occurred somewhere in Cronus. A breach had only happened once before during a dust storm about 6 years ago. A piece of metal had become dislodged and punctured a wall in an empty living unit. Luckily, there were security measures in place that would immediately seal any room with a breach to protect the rest of Cronus. No one was harmed in the incident. But what was causing this one? There was no storm outside and no reason for debris to be flying around, putting us at risk. I exited my room and immediately noticed a crowd gathered around Nigel's room.
Ow!
Stephanie shouted at me from across the commons.
Nigel's stuck inside. There's been a breach.
What? How?
Someone's outside. They've intentionally ruptured his living unit.
I stood in a dismal state of shock as the crowd buzzed in nervous waves. I was wrong. I thought Cronus would continue to thrive, but I underestimated the influence fear and the pursuit of self-preservation can have. Get him out! I screamed at Stephanie, simultaneously running across commons toward the wild commotion that overtook the entirety of the colony. Use the override switch to open the door! Nobody's touching anything! A voice I recognized as Miggy roared from within the crowd. Stay back! The crowd all began to move backwards, clearing a line of sight that led to Miggy, standing with his back against the door and his arms outstretched like a bird. He stood vigilant with a look of determination, guarding the door and preventing the rescue of Nigel. This is a group effort. From the other side, he was being tortured as the atmospheric pressure rapidly changed. He slammed his body furiously against the door in a frenzied panic. Nigel! I screamed. If you can hear me, use the emergency kit to patch the hole! Miggy shook his head at me. We removed the kit from his room. There's no escape. Stephanie held her ground, inching closer to Miggy as the rest backed away.
Miggy, how could you?
We're doing what's necessary. We have to protect the people of Cronus. She ignored his conviction and ran forward.
Get out of the way, you monster!
Miggy lunged at Stephanie, raised his hand and brought it down across her face. The slap sent Stephanie tumbling to the floor as the rest of us gasped in disbelief. The outline of a spacesuit outside passed by the window to my left, the person fleeing the sabotage they created. Craig appeared out of the crowd and bolted towards Miggy.
You son of a bitch!
He charged and tackled Miggy to the ground, pinning him against the floor and slamming his fists into his face. Each blow sent droplets of blood flying through the air. I took the opportunity to rush at the override button. I was only a few meters away from the controls when a fist swung and collided with my face. The impact set me stumbling, and I struggled to stay on my feet. By the time I regained composure and prepared to defend myself from another attack, the entire commons had erupted into a brawl. Bodies were contorted as they wrestled on the floor, everyone struggling to either save Nigel or ensure he dies. Amid the chaos, I moved to the override controls and pressed the button. As the door whisked open, the mayhem that was taking place subsided, everyone instead focusing on the door. A whistling sound immediately flew into the commons as the air pressure quickly changed. The skin on my face instantly felt as though it was being held against a roaring fire. As the door opened, Nigel's body fell forward and plopped on the floor in front of me with a loud thud. "Pull him out so I can close the door!" I yelled at nobody in particular. A woman grabbed Nigel by the collar of his shirt and dragged his body out of the clearing. Once he was out, I operated the controls and closed the door. Our efforts to save Nigel were too late. When his body was flipped over, his face was a horrifying disfigurement of its former self. His eyes bulged from their sockets and looked like two water balloons that had been filled to the maximum capacity and were about to explode. The blood vessels in his skin had all constricted, expanding the flesh of his face into a bright red ball. I held back an acidic taste that rose from deep within my throat. Mars had finished what it started on Nigel. It had fully consumed him and ended his life.
"Spare your empathy for someone who's not a killer,"
Miggy commented, breaking the silence that had fallen over us. He lay on the ground, trying to recuperate from the beating he received from Craig. I ignored Miggy's heinous remark. There would be time to deal with him appropriately later on. He could have his victory. At the moment, there was still a person outside, lurking around Cronus, and still a potential risk. And I knew who it was.
"You've won, Miggy. You and whoever else wanted this. Congratulations. You've destroyed everything we've worked for. And you will all be held accountable for your actions today."
I paused and bit my lip, furious by the notion of what Cronus had succumbed to.
How do we live with each other now?
How can any of us sleep peacefully at night when the prospect of survival is determined by the will of another? I paused again, turning slowly and met Miggy's eyes before pointing my finger at him. 20 years. My entire life's work, the future ambition of humanity, all destroyed in an instant. All of it ruined and gone forever.
"You'll pay for this!"
I bellowed at him. An eerie silence devoured the room. Every person stood still and allowed the magnitude of our reality to sink in. I briskly turned and walked away from the scene.
Where are you going?
"I'm going to the airlock."
I moved through commons, walking with a purposeful stride past the series of living units. Some of them were occupied with frightened people, all staring at me nervously as I passed them. She was already entering the airlock by the time I reached it. I could see the red lights blinking through the small window, an alert that the outside door was opening. Vanessa was coming back inside.
"Are you happy with yourself?"
I said into the headset as I positioned myself at the airlock controls.
"You've destroyed this colony. Is that what you wanted?"
Al,
She walked up to the window and stared back at me.
I saw what happened inside the commons.
You were so determined to get rid of a killer that you became a killer yourself.
Yeah, you're right.
The outside door closed behind her. I flicked the switch and the airlock came to life, whirling in a hiss as I optimized the pressure for her.
"I shouldn't have listened to you,"
I admitted. She had given me a warning earlier that clemency would result in anarchy. I failed to comprehend the fear others had and assumed my altruistic efforts would humanize Nigel. The potential consequences were not considered. We are instinctively programmed to prioritize survival. Fear consumes us. It disrupts tranquility and motivates harmful actions.
We should have punished Nigel.
No, you were right, Al. I see what we've become. I see it now. There's blood on my hands. That's not who I wanted to be.
She unhinged her helmet, then placed a finger on the window and outlined a heart.
"What are you doing?"
She looked back at me and tearfully said,
Goodbye, Al.
In one smooth motion, she pulled her helmet off and slapped the release button, opening the doors behind her. Her body collapsed, falling below the window and out of sight into an agonizing death. Cronus is done, I told Ivan, sitting face to face with him in the briefing room the next day. This time he met with me alone. The damage is irreparable. We had progressed faster than we could have anticipated. Cronus had changed, but we had not changed with it.
Right.
He replied, his face a blank stare.
Too many people, not enough regulation.
No one is willing to live under these circumstances any longer. I know it'll take time. We'll wait for you. He huffed in defeat.
Very well. We'll start working on an exit strategy.
Make sure there's enough to accommodate 58.
Aren't there 69 left?
I nodded and gave him a menacing glare. Miggy and his accomplices are being put to death as soon as this briefing is over. Hey everybody, I hope you enjoyed that story. This one was a little bit of a shorter one, and I would say it wasn't your traditional horror story. The fear in this one, I think, comes from the isolation and just being in that situation. Also knowing that help is so far away, and even if they wanted to come and help, it would take years for them to get there. There wasn't anything paranormal or alien related that I got in the story. It really was just about somebody kind of going crazy and killing somebody and then the ramifications of that. I think it's a really interesting premise, and it's a situation that I'd say is pretty realistic. You know, if you were on Mars and somebody you were with killed somebody, how would you handle it? I think there's merits to both sides, not necessarily feeling like it's right to kill somebody, but then again, in that situation, what do you do, you know? But I'm really curious to see what all of you think. For the next video, I'm going to try to get Baraska done over the weekend and upload it on Monday or Tuesday because I'm going on my trip for a few days on Tuesday, and I'd like to get that done before I go, just so you all have something nice and long to listen to. I'm not really going to be gone that long. I'm only going to be gone 4 days, but yeah. I don't really think I have anything else to say. I'll be in the comments like I normally am, and I hope you have a great weekend. At some point, everyone asks themselves how different their life would be if they had been given a second chance. It could come in any form you like. You could have been one number off of winning the lottery. Maybe you're one of those people who wondered what would have happened if that ex of yours had taken you back. Whatever it is, at some point you think about those things, and you notice people who were given those opportunities, and it seemed to work out all right for them. On the outside, anyway. Take it from me. I used to be like that. I used to kick myself all the time for letting myself miss out on some opportunities I was too dumb to take at the time or follow through with. And then I started loathing the people I saw who were better off than me, and sometimes I would curse God for picking them over me. I know better now. I don't think God has much to do with how things like that get chosen. I think now that things all really come down to luck and our choice at what to do about it. At least, I hope we have a choice when it comes down to our lives. That luck doesn't rule that too. What I more importantly learned is that sometimes you are just better off doing the best you can with the cards you are dealt and not trying to change your hand. I've been looking over my shoulder ever since I learned this. Sometimes at night I can catch a glimpse of a faint glow of green eyes watching me. They are never there when I turn around. Whenever I find money on the street or lose some laundry, I can feel those eyes staring at me. I was in a car wreck a week ago. A cat ran out in front of me and I swerved to avoid it, hitting a barrier. As I got out, I could swear this chilling giggling came over the radio. The sound was all too familiar to me now. I know it is waiting for me. It's waiting for one more shot at me, toying with me as time passes. It toys with you too, with everyone. It all started one night at a local casino. What was that count again? I thought to myself as I stared down at the table. Was it up 2 or was it 3? I doubled down on the last hand, and I was so thrilled to win it, I didn't see the last 2 cards the guy to the left of me was dealt. The dealer was showing a 3, so my best bet was to play it safe with my 12 and stand. The old dealer makes a hand gesture on the table and flatly tells me good luck before he moves on to the guy to my left. I only recently learned to count cards, but I had never actually done it at a casino before. It's easy to do at home on your coffee table, quietly saying the numbers aloud, but when you're actually there, if you're too obvious about what you're doing, it's an express ticket to meeting the pavement outside. I'm here again tonight. The last time I came in, I won some decent money. Not really enough money to do anything meaningful with, but enough to make me want to come back. This time, I came prepared with the counting system I learned watching YouTube videos and gleaning what I could from various internet sites. This system is supposed to improve my odds at winning in the long run, but I guess that's why they call them odds and not surety. For a moment, I look up and stare at the other gamblers on the floor. There are some people around the roulette table, the usual old women parked at their nickel and penny slots, and the other blackjack players. I look in the direction of the high roller area and see men and women in nice suits and dresses throwing money around like it was a game of Monopoly. This resentment builds up in my gut, so I look away. I was really just pissed at myself. There was a time when I could have been like that. If I hadn't dropped out of law school the previous year, I could have stuck it out. I could have done something meaningful. I guess I still can. I'm still fairly young. The issue with that was that I had a dead-end job at the moment. My father used to help me out financially when I was in school. He was a high-end divorce lawyer for people unlucky enough to fall in love with the wrong person. Needless to say, he did very well. We had a huge fight when I told him I dropped out of school. My mother had died in a car accident when I was 13, so I didn't have her to turn to. He said I gave up too easily. I won't admit it to him, but he was right. I guess I don't really hate those rich people over in the high roller corner of the room. I'm just angry with myself that I couldn't cut it to make it like they did. I hate myself for giving up and blowing what I had away. I saw gambling as an easy fix for how I felt, and maybe, just maybe, I could eventually get good enough to turn it around just enough to go back to school and try again. I glanced back at the cards to my left slightly and changed the count accordingly. Statistically, at this point, the dealer should bust. The old man throws the other player a card, then goes back to his own hand. He flips over his down card to show a 7. There's a voice in my head that says, "Are you kidding me?" He hits and gets a queen of spades.
20. Sorry about that, son.
The old dealer says in that flat, rehearsed voice. It's all right. Not like I was going to break even or anything. I tried to be cool about it. Tough break, goes the voice in my head.
Tough break.
I hear someone say behind me, almost in unison with the thought I had. I turn my head to the side as this small sinking feeling hits my lungs. It was the kind of jarring feeling you get at weird coincidences like that. To my right was a blonde woman who looked to be in her early 30s, wearing a dark, expensive-looking dealer's uniform. A moment ago, the seat on my right was empty. She was looking at me with these green eyes. It was a strange look she was giving me, almost like she was noticing something nobody else could see. Sometimes you hear people use the term piercing gaze. That didn't even begin to describe the vibe I was getting from her. Then she smiles at me, slowly, revealing every white tooth at her own pace. The lips hover over her canines slightly, and for a moment, I almost expect to see a pair of vampire fangs.
I'm not that pretty.
I turn my head back to the table. I must have looked stupid staring back at her like that. Normally, I would have blushed staring at a woman like that, but for some reason, I wasn't getting the blood to my face fast enough. Instead, there was still this draining feeling. Sorry, I didn't see you sit down was all. I tried to brush it off.
I forgive you. For now.
Out of the corner of my eye, I see her smile, that vampire smile again. The dealer interrupts her and asks how many chips she's going to buy. She tells him $5 worth.
Ma'am, it's a $5 table. Are you sure you don't want any more?
$5 will be just fine.
The cards get dealt again, and I see I have a 15 total for this hand. I realize I had completely forgotten the running count I was keeping. The moment that thought crossed my mind, the woman turns her head to me and says,
It all comes down to luck anyway.
I'm not sure anyone else at the table heard that. I might have thought she was with the casino, catching card counters, but she was playing like all the other people here. Still, she had my attention as we played. I have never said this about anyone else I have ever met, but she was eerily fascinating to watch. She was pretty, of course, but not the kind of pretty you would see on TV or in fashion magazines. More real-to-life features. She wasn't thin, not by today's standards anyway, but I wouldn't call her fat either. She wasn't tan at all, but not really pale either. What drew my attention the most was how she played. It was like watching a child playing a game of Go Fish. She was just kind of doing things. Hitting, standing, doubling down, not really looking like she was considering anything. I would have thought she was just another dumb blonde girl, except she was winning every hand. At first, I blew it off as dumb luck. Then, after about 5 hands, I started getting angry. I was playing to basic strategy, modifying my bets and my play as I thought the count was going, and I was slowly losing. In contrast, this woman sitting next to me, seemingly without a care in the world, never losing her smile, was making ridiculous plays and having them pay off. By the 10th hand, I was just awestruck. The woman had a hard 19 for a hand, and she picked up her chips and places her bet and says,
"Double down."
The dealer was staring at her incredulously, as was I, and asked her if she was sure. She only giggled at him and nodded her head. She had this look on her face that almost made me think she was drunk. But she didn't have a drink, didn't even smell of booze. The dealer sighed a bit as he took the next card out and placed it next to her hand. There was only one card that would help her, and there it was, a 2. The guy to my left roars with disbelief and the dealer laughs. I just keep staring, not even caring about my losing streak. She didn't seem surprised or happy, just this look of drunken contentment. Calmly, she picks up a 5 chip and pushes the rest to the table and stands up. The dealer asks her what she's doing with her chips, and the only thing she says is,
"Easy come, easy go."
She turns to me.
"Hungry? I was just about to go over to the diner if you're interested."
I was dumbstruck at the sudden offer. The only thing I managed to say was, sure. I didn't even really think about it. As I was cashing out what little I had left, I had a short conversation with myself. Maybe she was an elite player who got kicks out of impressing new players. She did catch me counting cards, didn't she? Maybe she worked for the casino. Her outfit does resemble a uniform, but I'd never seen any like it before. Black with gold trim and silver buttons. I caught up with her as she entered the diner adjacent from the casino floor. She placed a small handbag on the table and motioned for me to sit at the chair opposite her. It was a nice-looking place. It was a hotel diner and casino. Not like Vegas or anything, but definitely cared about. Well-furnished and well-kept. A waitress came over and asked us what we would like to drink. I checked my lightened pockets and asked for water. The woman only said,
"No, thank you."
Normally, I'm the one who has to ask somebody out. I joked. She only stared at me with those green eyes of hers as we sat down, her smile no longer present. She reached over the table, offering me a handshake. I clasped her hand, noticing an expensive-looking ring she was wearing. "I'm Jake, and you are Mrs.
"Miss."
Sorry, I thought you were married." She looked down at her ring.
"Well, in a way, I am. I'm married to my job."
She let go of my hand. "What is your job?" As soon as I say this, I can hear the beeping and whirling noises of a slot machine hitting a jackpot. At the sound of the slot machine, the woman's eyes slowly close, and she gave a contentious smile as the intoxicated look returned to her face. "Miss, are you okay?"
"I'm wonderful."
She giggles a bit as her eyes open again. I admit this woman made me feel a bit uneasy, but I was too drawn in by everything I had seen to just walk away now. "Do you work here at the casino?"
"Today I am. Why don't you ask me what you really want to ask me?"
"What do you mean?"
"At the card table. You want to know how I did what I did."
"How did you do that? It was like you knew what card was coming next." At that time, I thought she might be one of those people you see on the news sometimes who have superhuman memory. I thought she might have kept track of where all the cards were. It was a far-fetched explanation, I know, but I was at a loss for everything else rational.
"I didn't know. It was luck."
Luck? She must be playing with me. So why did you win all that money if you weren't going to keep it?
I didn't win anything. I just moved it around a bit is all. It was fun.
Moved it?
Do you keep everything you've ever gotten? Every dollar you earn at your job? Does it sit in a bank somewhere, or do you send it elsewhere?
Well, everyone spends their money, but I don't see what that has to do with your casino chips.
So it's not really yours then?
Are you talking philosophically? I guess in that sense, nobody really owns anything.
Why do you say that?
Well, ultimately, you can't really keep anything.
And that is my job.
She smiles that drunken vampire smile of hers again as she closes her eyes and rolls her head. I'm still not getting it. Is something wrong? She ignores me, seemingly lost in something I can't quite grasp.
Somebody here just lost $2,000 at the roulette table.
As I hear her say that, I can hear aggravated yelling in the distance. She has to be putting me on, I thought to myself. Whatever this woman was on, she was really feeling it now. It was like waves of euphoria were washing over her as her body quaked slightly. Her giggling turned to laughter. I felt uncomfortable, like people were starting to stare at us. Her laughing died down a bit as she tilted her head back down towards her lap. She still had that smile on her face while she slowly brought her head back in my direction. Those green eyes opened as her tongue came out and licked her lips. If this were any other woman, I would have thought I was being hit on. This woman, however, made me feel like I was a deer staring a wolf in the face. A sudden instinct kicked in somewhere inside me to run. I wanted to be as far away from this woman as possible. I think the only thing that kept me from doing that right then was the fact we were in a public place. I would look stupid running away from a pretty girl in front of everyone. I always thought there was some irony about mankind being at the top of the food chain for our intellect, and yet so stupid to be able to ignore those kinds of voices.
So tell me, what is it that you would want if you could have anything?
She came to instantly and stared at me with that gaze. I didn't like it. I wanted to look away from her eyes, but I found that I couldn't. This feeling entered my throat and worked its way down into my chest. At once, I found myself talking without meaning to. I told her about how I dropped out of college last year. I was going to law school to become an attorney like my dad. I dropped out because it got too hard and I just gave up. I saw it as years of my life spent on something that may or may not work out. My dad was helping with the tuition, and when I gave up, he cut off financial support completely. I told her all of this, every personal detail I wouldn't tell anyone. I told her about how bad I felt letting my dad down, about how he tried to raise me on his own after my mother died. I guess if I could have anything, it would be the money to go back to school.
So what you want is a second chance?
You could say that, I admitted. My control returned and found I was breathing a bit heavier than normal. I didn't want to sit here with this woman anymore. I tried to tell her I had a movie date with my girlfriend, and I started to get up from the chair. What I heard next made me sit back down.
You don't have a girlfriend, Mr. Reynolds.
I never told her my last name. She was right, though. I didn't have a girlfriend. How did you...
I'm going to make you an offer, Mr. Reynolds. I can give you that second chance you want.
What do you mean? I hate to admit it, but I was curious.
All you have to do is play your favorite card game again.
She says this as she reaches into her handbag and pulls out an odd-looking single deck of cards, the backs of which had a black and gold pattern to match her uniform.
The game is blackjack. Rules are the same, except you cannot surrender hands. And you play to 10 hands before you cash out. It will be a game you won't be able to walk away from once we begin.
I don't even have money to bet with.
It's all right. You have 10 chips to start out with.
She pulls a handful of solid black poker chips from her handbag and pushes them towards me.
All you have to do is come out ahead at the end of 10 hands. And I make sure you get your second chance.
What happens if I don't come out ahead? I didn't fully believe what I was hearing, but I just couldn't pull myself away.
You will never be able to get another chance again. At anything.
She says this as I touch the chips pushed over to me. They were smooth, cold to the touch, and lackluster. As soon as I touch them, the woman smiles again.
It has begun.
What? I didn't say I wanted to play.
You touch the chips. At the tables, they make you touch chips that aren't originally yours before you use them. You touch them. You play.
I noticed my throat was dry, and I looked around for the waitress. I hadn't gotten my water yet, and that's when I noticed the waitress was gone. In fact, the only ones in the diner were myself and this woman. I could no longer hear the music playing either. The air in here had suddenly gone still. I couldn't even hear the noises of the casino coming in from outside. Where is everyone? I was definitely on edge, looking around the room for anyone. The hairs on the back of my neck were standing up as goosebumps appeared on my arms. I stand up and start calling for the waitress.
Waitress, you and I are right here.
She giggles at me as if I asked a silly question.
Sit down, Mr. Reynolds. We have a game to play.
I step outside the diner and back into the casino floor. Nobody was there. Not a single person. No security guard checking IDs at the front. No dealers, no gamblers. There weren't even any old women putting pennies in slot machines. Some movement caught my attention out of the corner of my eye, but it was only the roulette wheel still spinning, slowing down as the marble clacked into a slot. As I stared around, a bead of sweat rolls down my cheek.
Mr. Reynolds.
I spin around to see the woman at one of the blackjack tables, standing at the dealer spot, the black and gold deck and a dispenser. I never saw her get up from the diner or heard her move. She points at a solitary stool at the opposite end of the table.
Sit down.
She orders me. I start walking hurriedly to the front doors. I half expected her to start chasing me. I even took glancing looks behind me. She was still standing at the card table, smiling at me as I made my way away from her. I start speed walking past rows of slot machines. The machines are dead and lifeless. Then I see her again, the smiling figure between rows of machines, moving in step with me, but always standing there. I can't see her move, but she is right there, keeping pace beside me. I go off into a full sprint. I'm zigzagging through the maze of machines. I start to hear the whirling sounds as one of the slot machines kicks on as their reels spin madly. Some spew coins onto the floor like waterfalls as I pass. I turn the corner, trying anything to shake her. My feet catch a pile of coins on the floor and I fall. As soon as I hit the floor, I spin to my back and look up. Nothing is there. Nothing but the machines kicking on and off. This sensation touches my right ear and brushes my hair. I spin painfully hard on my tailbone to see her standing over me. This thing resembled her. The outstretched hand was elongated, and her fingernails took on a sinister sharpness. Her jaw was off its hinges and gave way to a wide gate, revealing edged teeth as those green eyes sank into the skull, darkening as they went into a faint glow.
I know you want to play with me.
I scrambled up, nearly falling again as I took off straight for the exit. A couple of my fingernails bent painfully as I scraped the ground as I got to my feet again. My hands plunged into my jeans, frantically searching for my car keys. I had them out as I collided with the door release bar. I had a split second to grab the door again as I dropped my car keys, holding onto it for dear life. When I collided with the door, it did indeed give way to the outside. As to what outside I was peering into, to this day I am not sure of. I was looking at nothing. To say there weren't any cars would assume I was looking at an empty parking lot. So looking at an empty lot would mean I was still looking at a field, at ground, dirt with sky over it. I couldn't see any of that. I saw nothing. Nothing but a black void giving way to infinity. It was a sickening feeling peering into it, watching my car keys tumbling downward, their jingling swan song fading as I lost sight of them.
Mr. Reynolds.
I heard her voice behind me. My head turns back as I see the same horror now half an inch from my face. I jumped. I cannot tell you how far I fell or how long I cried, falling wildly as I screamed, my throat raw. I do remember starting to drift off into my own thoughts as I finally was able to shut my eyes. I remembered thinking to myself I would be lucky to finally hit the bottom in my sleep. Sometimes I wish I would have.
Mr. Reynolds.
I hear the voice of the woman say sweetly. I open my eyes meekly, and the smiling figure of the woman is there, behind a card table I find myself sitting at. Her features were normal again, as if the terror behind that sweet face never existed.
It's time to play.
When you wake up from a nightmare, there is a brief moment of lingering fear. You open your eyes and look around your bedroom. Everything seems to be in the same place as it always was. The blankets, sheets, and pillows comforting you as the terrible memory of whatever monstrous thing you were dreaming about fades away, until you may be only able to recall one or two key things about the dream. After all of that, you get up and go about your day, or try to fall back asleep and drift into better places. For me, this was not one of those times. A moment ago, I was falling into an infinite void of utter nothingness, praying for an end to it, hoping that at least death could free me from whatever I had stumbled into. I bring my hands up and place them on the edge of the table, gripping the cushioning. They shook violently, and I squeezed hard to try to get them under control. This sick feeling in the pit of my stomach and labored breathing told her I was afraid. That's when I saw the fingers on my left hand were bleeding. I remembered scratching the floor trying to run away from her. It still hurt, so I eased up my grip on the table.
I see I have your attention now, Mr. Reynolds. Place your bet.
She said softly, taking the black deck in hand. With a flawless grace, the woman began shuffling the cards, her movement captivating. Movements such as these would be practiced, but it all just seemed to flow so naturally to her. Every card seemed to know where it was going as it slid alongside one another, barely making more than a whisper of noise in the hall. The black poker chips had been set out in front of me. I placed my right hand over the stack, and I felt a warm sensation emanating out of them. My hand shook less at the feeling. The warmth traveled up my arm and washed over me. The sickly feeling I had numbed a bit. What's going on? She tilts her head to one side and gives me a curious look as if I had just asked something really obvious.
We are playing blackjack. What does it look like? Didn't I already explain that?
I could only stare at her blankly. The memory of her other form was still very fresh in my mind. The vivid image of the teeth, claws, the graying skin, and those eyes faint and glowing deep in her skull was still fresh in my mind. She could kill me if she wanted to. What was she waiting for?
Like I've already said, this will be a standard game of blackjack with a few rule modifications. You're not allowed to surrender a hand, as you've already seen. You can't walk away from the table. We play to 10 hands or until you are out of chips. And lastly, all you need to do is come out ahead at the end of those 10 hands to win.
What happens if I lose? She only sighed at the question, and her smile fades.
Mr. Reynolds, you will find I don't have much in the way of patience.
Her skin began to gray again, her eyes slowly retreating into